Lieutenant Mason Grant sat on the smooth crystal floor, arms wrapped around his knees. His skin stung from the icy air, but he didn't shiver. He refused to show weakness around him. 4 walls of transparent blue crystal glowed softly. Outside the cell, tall alien guards stood like statues. Their armor was dark silver, their eyes hidden behind smooth helmets. They hadn't moved in hours. Mason slowly looked around. He had seen many strange things during the war, but this ship was different. It wasn't built with metal and wires like human ships. Everything here seemed grown, shaped like flowing glass and glowing roots. It was beautiful and terrifying. He touched his chest. Under his uniform, hidden in a small pocket, was a metal button. It was no ordinary button. It held a tool, something tiny, sharp, and dangerous. A human spy's last trick. He couldn't use it yet. Not until the right moment. Suddenly the guards moved. Their armor hummed quietly as they stepped aside. A tall figure entered the room. She was unlike the others. Her body was thin and elegant. Her skin pale gold, like smooth stone under sunlight. A long cloak made of feathers and glowing threads floated behind her. Her head was crowned with 6 small horns, rising like silver branches. The alien queen, Queen Yalexa, ruler of the Varelian Empire. Mason stood up slowly. He met her gaze. Her eyes were silver, like stars in a night sky, and cold as space itself. The translator sphere floated beside her. It clicked softly before speaking in perfect English. "Human," it said, "you are the last soldier from the Battle of New Eden. All others have perished." Mason didn't speak. The queen's face didn't move. She studied him like a scientist observing a strange insect. "You fought well. Most humans would have begged by now, but you wait." Mason gave a small smile. "Maybe I'm just patient, or foolish," the translator replied. The queen stepped closer. Her guards remained still. "Earth will be next," she said. "But you can stop it." Now Mason looked straight at her. "This is your last chance," said the alien queen. "Give us your defense codes. Give us access to your home system. We will take it quickly, without fire, without blood. If I say no," Mason asked, "then Earth will burn." The words echoed in the cold cell. Mason said nothing for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "Guess you'll need a lot of fire." The guard stepped forward, but the queen raised her hand. They stopped. "So be it," she said. "You will remain here. I may offer you one more chance, but no more after that." Without another word, she turned and left. The guard sealed. The cell behind her, Mason waited until they were gone. Then he slowly sat back down. His heart was beating hard, but his face remained calm. Later that night, the lights in the hall dimmed. The guards outside stood silent again. Mason pulled the metal button from his hidden pocket. He pressed it, and a tiny tool unfolded like a spider made of wires. A human invention designed for sabotage. He crouched near the energy bars at the side of his cell. Carefully, he slid the spider tool through a small crack, where the bars met the wall. The tool crawled inside the panel. Mason whispered commands. The tool clicked and flashed as it worked. If he disabled the power grid just enough, he could escape when Earth's strike team arrived. But that depended on one thing: if Earth even knew where he was. 3 days earlier, the Varelian fleet had attacked New Eden, a growing human colony on the edge of explored space. Their ships were fast, silent, and deadly. Mason had fought hard. He was part of the 11th Ranger Unit, elite soldiers. They lost. He was captured after his gunship crashed. Into a forest of crystal trees. He was dragged away, unconscious. When he woke up, he was already on this alien ship. No other humans had survived. At least, that's what the Queen said. But Mason wasn't just a soldier. He was a spy, too. Before the crash, he had sent a quick, coded message coordinates, warning signs, a beacon. The signal was weak. Maybe it didn't reach Earth. Maybe no one was coming. But if they did, they'd need help from the inside. That was his job now. The next day, Mason was taken from his cell again. 2 guards led him down a glowing hallway to a huge chamber filled with alien lights. giant floating screens, and strange symbols. Queen Ylexa sat on a high throne made of crystal and silver. Dozens of Varelian nobles stood below her, silent and watchful. The translator floated beside her again. "You asked for one thing," it said. "To see Earth again?" Mason nodded. "You shall." A huge screen lit up. Stars filled the image, map of the galaxy, with glowing trails showing Varelian control across hundreds of systems. At the center was Earth. It looked small, blue and alone. The Queen's voice came through the translator. "This is what we see. This is where your kind hides. You are brave, but you are few. You cannot win." Mason stared at the image. His eye implant recorded everything: the star, map, the ship routes, even the alien writing. Data flowed silently into the device, hidden behind his eye. Earth scientists would decode it. He just had to survive long enough to send it. "You still refuse to help?" said the Queen. Mason gave her a slow look. "I'm already helping." She tilted her head slightly, not understanding. Then the guards pulled him away. Back in his cell, Mason sat quietly, reached up and tapped his temple twice. The eye implant glowed softly and blinked red. It needed a transmission signal. He looked up at the ceiling. The ship's communication tower was just above his cell. That's why they put him here, far from others, under full surveillance. But that also meant the signal might reach Earth. He activated the neural uplink and began sending the stolen data bit by bit, using low-frequency pulses too, small to detect unless you were looking for them. He didn't know if it would work, but he had to try. Hours passed. Suddenly, the ship shook. A soft alarm sounded in the distance. The guards outside his cell spoke. Quickly in their language, Mason stood up. He could feel it. Something had changed. Maybe Earth had received his message. Maybe help was coming, but before he could move, the door opened again. The Queen stepped in once more. She looked calm, but her silver eyes seemed darker now. "You are playing a dangerous game," said the translator. Mason shrugged. "I'm just sitting here." "No," she said. "You are planning something. I can feel it." She stepped closer. "This is your last chance," she said again. "Surrender Earth or lose it forever." Mason smiled. "That's the thing about humans, Your Highness. We don't surrender." She stared at him for a long time. Then she turned away. "Then prepare," she said, "for extinction." The door closed behind her. The great warship Sartell moved silently through the darkness of space, far from any star. It was a ship made for fear, beautiful but deadly. Its long crystal towers and curved silver walls looked like a palace, but it carried weapons strong, enough to destroy entire planets. Inside one of its many chambers, Lieutenant Mason Grant stood again in front of the alien Queen. This time, the room was larger, grander, and filled with more eyes watching him. Above him, glowing shapes floated. In the air maps, battle records, destroyed planets, the room was filled with tall, thin aliens, each dressed in strange and shining robes. They were Varelian nobles' advisors, generals, scientists. And at the center sat Queen Ylexa. She didn't wear a crown, but she didn't need one. Her presence filled the room. Her silver eyes were calm, but there was something sharp behind them, like a knife, waiting in silence. The translator sphere floated near her again, glowing softly. "You are here," it said, "because the Queen is curious. She wonders why you are not afraid." Mason stood tall, even with chains on his wrists. "Because fear helps no one, not now." The Queen's head tilted slightly. A ripple of quiet passed through the nobles. "Humans are strange," the sphere continued. "You lose, yet you speak like victors." Mason's eyes scanned the floating images around him. He saw battle maps and troop numbers, saw captured colonies and destroyed fleets. The Varelians were winning, but Mason also saw something else. He saw overconfidence, too much pride. The Queen stood up. Everyone in the room bowed their heads. Only Mason stayed still. She walked slowly down the steps of her throne, stopping just a few feet from him. She looked him in the eyes. "You say fear helps no one?" the translator said. "Let us test your truth." Mason narrowed his eyes. "Test, you may walk free." No chains. For now. The guards unlocked his cuffs. He rubbed his wrists. Watching her carefully, "You want to see Earth again?" the queen said. "You shall. First a choice." She raised her hand. The floating images vanished. A new one appeared. 2 planets side by side. One was green and blue Earth. The other was dusty and red, with human buildings on its surface. "This is Terra 9, the queen explained. "A mining world, mostly civilians. Human-owned." Mason's heart beat faster. He knew the place. It was a peaceful colony. No weapons, just families and workers. "You have a choice, human," the translator said. "We have ships near both Earth and Terra 9. We will attack one. The other will be spared. Choose," the queen said. "Save one." Mason stepped back. "That's not a choice. That's a trap." "No," said the queen. "It is a test. Show us your loyalty. Choose wisely, and we may talk peace." Mason stared at the 2 planets, both full of innocent people, both in danger. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "To learn," the queen answered. "We want to understand how your kind thinks." Mason looked at the screen. Then, back at the queen. "I won't choose. Then both die," he said, stepping forward. "I see what this is. You want to prove that humans only care about Earth? That we're selfish?" "A reasonable guess," the sphere said. "You're wrong," Mason said. "We care about all our people, not just our home." The queen looked at him for a long time. "You may return to your cell," the sphere said. "You chose nothing. But you answered everything." Back in his crystal prison, Mason paced the floor. His mind was full of thoughts. He couldn't tell if he passed the queen's test or failed it. Maybe there was no right answer. He sat down, pulled the spider tool from its hiding place again, and opened a small panel in the wall. Inside was a bundle of glowing wires. He worked carefully. If he overloaded the panel at the right time, he could shut down the cell's energy field for a few minutes, enough to slip out. But he still had a problem he didn't know where to go. The ship was massive. Even if he escaped, he'd be lost in a maze of alien halls. He needed help. That night, help found him. A soft click came from the hallway. Mason stood up fast, but instead of a guard, a small figure stepped close to his cell wall. It was a young alien shorter than the others, thinner, without armor or robes. He wore simple clothing and held a glowing tablet. His skin shimmered with soft blue light. He looked nervous. Mason stepped closer. The alien tapped the crystal. Then spoke in a soft voice. "You are Mason." Mason blinked. "You speak English? Learned its secret no one knows?" "My name is Relic. I study life forms. I wanted to study humans. But now I study you." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You're a scientist?" Relic nodded. "Junior scientist. Not important, but think what the queen does is wrong." Mason's eyes narrowed. "Why are you here?" "Because I think you're not like the others. You do not scream. You do not lie. And," he paused, "you do not fear." Mason gave a slow smile. "That's what she said." Relic looked around, then held up his tablet. It showed a simple map of the ship. "I can help you move, but only once. I can only give you one chance." Mason looked at the map. It showed a path from his cell to the maincom's tower. That was the place he needed. "Why are you helping me?" Mason asked. Relic's glow dimmed slightly. "'Cause if I do nothing, I am also guilty." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Later that night, Mason stared at the ceiling. He had the tool. He had the map. And now, he had a possible ally, but he still needed time. And the perfect moment, suddenly, alarms began to sound across the ship. Lights turned red. Voices shouted in the alien language. Mason jumped to his feet. Something was happening, far away in space. Near the edge of Varelian territory, a human ship appeared. It was small, just a scout, but it sent out a loud message one meant to be heard. To the Varelian Empire, the message said. We know you hold one of our people. Release him, or prepare to meet more of us. Back on the ship, the queen stood in her war chamber, watching the human message play again and again. She turned to her generals. How did they find us? No one answered. Her silver eyes narrowed. The prisoner, she whispered. Back in his cell, Mason smiled. They got the message. He stood up and touched the wall. Soon, it would be time to act. But before he could move, the door opened again. This time 2 guards stepped in and grabbed his arms. They pulled him through the hall and into the throne chamber once more. Queen. Jalexa stood waiting. Her eyes were no longer calm. You sent a signal, she said. Did you think we wouldn't find it? Mason didn't answer. This is your final warning, she said, stepping forward. You have one last chance to save your world. He looked at her and spoke clearly. You had your chance. Mason's feet dragged across the crystal floor as the guards pulled him toward the throne chamber again. His arms were locked behind his back, but his mind raced. He had sent the signal. Earth had answered, now the Varelians knew, and so did Queen Jalexa. She waited at the center of the chamber, surrounded by her nobles and generals. The large star map hovered behind her, glowing red in some areas. Mason guessed those marks were human ships now entering Varelian territory. You were clever, said the translator sphere floating beside the queen, but not clever enough. Mason's lip twitched. You still caught the signal, huh? Yes, the queen said through the sphere, stepping closer. But we also caught your weakness. She pointed at the glowing map. One human scout ship hovered alone at the edge of the star lines. This is all your people sent? The sphere? Asked one tiny ship. You expected rescue, and they send a whisper. Mason smiled. One whisper can wake a world. The queen's expression did not change. You speak in riddles, she said, but riddles cannot save Earth. She raised her hand. The map changed. It now showed the Zartel, the Varelian flagship, with red lights blinking across its systems. You will see what happens when you push an empire, she said. You wanted to light a fire? Then burn with it. Mason's heart pounded. It wasn't a bluff. The ship was preparing for war. The guards turned to drag him away again. But just then, a loud explosion rocked the ship. The floor shook under their feet. The lights above blinked red. Sirens rang out in the Varelian language. Boom, boom, boom. 3 more blasts. The queen's eyes widened. Report. She shouted to her officers. One alien commander stepped forward, his voice sharp and panicked. Unknown force breached Hangar 9. Internal systems under attack. Mason couldn't help it. He grinned. They found me. In a dark corner of the ship, near the underhangars, a team of armored humans moved swiftly. 5 soldiers, part of Earth's Deep Recovery Unit. Unit each wore black combat suits with red visors. They moved like shadows, silent but deadly. Their leader, Captain Reyes, checked her scanner. Signal confirmed. The lieutenant is on board, somewhere near the central tower. One of the soldiers placed a shaped charge on a crystal wall. Explosion was quiet, but powerful. Cutting a path through the ship's inner shell, the humans moved forward. Their orders were clear. Find Mason, get him out, and take anything that could turn the war. Back in his cell, Mason was thrown to the floor again. The guards sealed the door, locking him inside. He lay still for a moment, catching his breath, then he pushed himself up, eyes burning with energy. The strike team was here. That meant it was time to move. He reached under the floor panel he had loosened days ago. The spider tool was still there. Glowing faintly, he placed it near the cell's power junction and activated it. The tool crawled into the panel and began slicing the energy lines. A few seconds later, the energy bars buzzed and faded out. Mason stepped through the wall of the cell. He was free. The hallway was empty. He moved fast, turning left, then right, following the map Relic had shown him. The alien scientist had marked a hidden tunnel that led directly to the Cums Tower. It was risky, but he had no choice. Along the way, past 2 guards knocked unconscious, signs of the human strike team. His people were getting closer, but time was running out. At the same moment, in a quiet research lab deep in the ship, Relic stood frozen. In front of a glowing screen, it showed Mason's cell. It showed the door open. He was free. Relac's hands trembled. He had helped him knowing full well it was treason. If the Queen discovered his actions, he would be punished or worse. But as he watched Mason's signal move through the halls, a strange feeling filled his chest. Not fear, hope. He turned and walked out of the lab, heading toward the comms tower. Mason reached the tower door. It was lock-thick, glowing with alien energy. He crouched, pulling the spider tool out again, but before he could use it, "I have a better way," said a voice. Mason spun around. Relic stood there, breathing hard, holding a Varelian code. "Tablet, you're crazy," Mason said. Relic smiled nervously. "So are you." He tapped the tablet. The door slid open. Inside, tall control panels blinked with alien symbols. Mason stepped in. "All right," he said. "Let's send Earth a message they can't ignore." The two worked fast. Relic translated the system controls while Mason inserted a small device from his pocket, something Earth Tech had designed to boost short-range transmissions. Together, they powered up the long-range beacon. A huge antenna above the tower started to rotate. Mason typed the message. "This is LT. Mason Grant. Onboard enemy flagship Zartel. Data recovered. Internal resistance growing. We are not alone." Added the full map of the Varelian fleet systems downloaded from the ship's core days ago through his eye implant. Then he hit send. The signal launched into space. Back on the bridge, Queen Ylexa stared at her failing systems. One by one, communications were being hijacked. Hangar gates opened. Defense turrets turned off. "Sabotage," one officer shouted. From inside, another whispered. Her silver eyes flashed.
"At the human,"
she said coldly. And someone else. Outside the comms tower, footsteps echoed. Varelian soldiers were coming. Relic looked scared. "We have to run," he said. Mason looked at him. "You don't have to come with me." Relic hesitated. Then he nodded. "Yes, I do." They ran through the halls. Behind them, the ship was breaking. Apart fights breaking out between loyalists and rebels. Some aliens had seen the truth. They no longer wanted to follow a queen who ruled through fear. Blaster fire echoed in the distance. Mason and Relic turned a corner and ran straight into the human strike team. "Mason," shouted Captain Reyes. They pulled him in. Relic raised his hands, unsure. "Who's this?" Reyes asked. "A friend," Mason said. "He helped me escape." Reyes looked at the alien for a second, then nodded. "Move. Extraction in 5 minutes." The team ran to the lower hangar. A small human ship waited there. Barely enough room for them all. Explosions shook the walls as they boarded, just before the ramp closed. Mason looked back. He saw the great alien halls shaking, lights flickering, alarms blaring. The mighty Zartel was no longer. It's untouchable. They had lit the fire. Now it would spread as the ship jumped into light speed. Mason sat beside Relic, catching his breath. "You all right?" he asked. Relic nodded slowly. Mason looked out the window, watching stars blur. Then he leaned back and closed his eyes. Earth was safe, for now, but the war was far from over. And the Queen. She wouldn't forget this. The warship Zartel was no longer the unstoppable fortress it had once been. Its gleaming halls were now filled with chaos and fear. The Queen's authority, once absolute, was slipping through her fingers like sand. Back on the bridge, Queen Ylexa stood in front of a huge viewport, staring into the swirling stars beyond. Her silver eyes burned with anger and disbelief. "Betrayal," she whispered to herself. Her commanders bowed their heads. "I'm sure what to say, Relic," she finally said. "Find him. Bring him to me. We're in a hidden chamber deep within the ship." Relic sat among a small group of rebels. These were Varelians who no longer believed in the Queen's ruthless rule. They were scientists, soldiers, and workers who wanted peace. Relic's face was tired but determined. Mason has awakened something in us, he said. We cannot ignore it. One rebel, a grizzled soldier named Thurl, nodded. The Queen's iron grip is cracking, but she will fight to the last breath. R'hllak looked at Mason, who sat quietly in the corner. We need a plan, Mason said. The Queen controls the ship's core. She can still destroy us all, Thurl growled. Softly, we must stop her before she destroys everything. Meanwhile, Queen Ylexa moved swiftly through the ship. Her guards cleared the way with silent efficiency. She arrived at the command deck, where her elite guard waited. These were the biomechanical warriors, half machine, half alien, loyal only to her. Their eyes glowed red as she entered. Want Mason found, she said coldly. And Relic, bring them to me alive. Her voice echoed through the chamber. Elsewhere. Mason and the rebels prepared for the Queen's return. They worked quickly to disable the ship's main weapon systems. Relic hacked into the control panels, while Thurl and his fighters stood. Ready? Mason checked his gear. His mind raced with plans, each more dangerous than the last. Suddenly, alarms blared again. The Queen's voice echoed through the speakers. You will not stop me, she said. Your rebellion ends now. Blaster fire erupted. The Queen's elite guard stormed the chamber. The rebels fought back fiercely. Mason faced the Queen. In the central hall, her armor gleamed under the lights. She was taller and stronger than any alien Mason had seen. You betray your own, she said. Why? Mason met her gaze. Because your rule brings only death. The Queen smiled coldly. You are weak. You will fall. She raised her hand and the biomechanical warriors attacked. Mason dodged and fought. The clash was brutal. Steel and energy against human will. Relic managed to disable the Queen's exosuit controls. Her movements slowed. She glared at him. You traitor, she hissed. Relic held his ground. This ends now, he said. Mason took the chance and tackled the Queen. She struggled, but was finally pinned. The battle over. The rebels took control. The Queen was captured and chained. Mason stood before her. This is your last chance, he said, echoing her own words. The Queen's eyes burned with rage, but Mason showed no fear. Change or be left behind. The ship's systems were now in the hands of the rebels. Earth's reinforcements arrived to help secure peace. Mason and Relic prepared for the negotiations that would decide the fate of both species. The war was ending. A new beginning was dawning. The great warship Zartel floated silently above a bright blue planet Tirth. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense, but different from before. The once cold and fearful halls now held a fragile hope. Queen Ylexa sat in chains in a large chamber. Her silver eyes burned with anger, but there was also something else, thoughtfulness. Mason Grant stood before her. His uniform was worn and dusty, but his gaze was steady. He remembered the Queen's words from the beginning. This is your last chance. Now, it was his turn to speak. The room was quiet. Mason looked at the Queen carefully. You have lost your throne, he said. She smiled bitterly. Yet I am still alive, she replied. That means you need me, Mason nodded. Yes, because peace is not just the end of war. It is the start of something new, something better. The Queen's eyes softened, just a little. Outside the chamber, the Varelian rebels and human soldiers worked side by side. Relic, the young Varelian scientist, walked with Captain Reyes. They talked quietly. We have much to rebuild, Relic said. Captain Reyes nodded. Double quotes. Both our peoples, both our worlds. Inside the chamber, the Queen leaned forward. You humans are strange, she said softly. You fight fiercely, but you also forgive, Mason smiled. We survive because we care for our friends, our families, even our enemies. The Queen looked away. I was wrong, she admitted, about humans and about power. Mason stepped closer. Change is hard, but it is possible. The room's doors opened. The leaders of Earth and the Varelian rebels entered. They were here too. Make a new treaty, a promise that the war would end. Mason turned to the Queen. "Will you stand with us?" he asked. She looked around the room. For the first time, the cold Queen showed hope. "I will try," she said. The treaty was signed. The room filled with quiet cheers and soft voices. Relic stepped forward. "I want to be the first ambassador," he said. Mason smiled. "Then let's show the galaxy what humans and Varelians can do together." Later, as Mason prepared to return to Earth, he looked out at the stars. He thought about the long war, about the hope now rising from the ashes, and about the promise of peace. The Queen's voice came over the ship's intercom, calm and clear. "This is your last chance," she said. But now Mason understood. It was no longer a warning. It was a promise.